brought up Sammy Gravano early, being a tough guy with his hands in boxing. Have you ever boxed with Sammy?
No.
No? You never went to the gym, hit the bag with him, or sparred?
No, but we're still good friends, and he's still in shape, and he likes to work. That's why I'm laughing. He says we joke about it all the time, and it's just in his DNA to be a workout guy. You know, he's really a. To me, I know a lot of people who talk a lot of because they don't know the mob world either. To me, they don't have no business talking about him or anybody else unless they were involved with us. If you're involved with us, I guess then you have a right of an opinion of him because you did business with us or you were involved with us, and you have a bone to pick about what on. But if you don't know what went on with us, how you making any judgment call about what that man did? Because I can tell you now, I could take 100 men in this room. If Gotti did the same thing to him, they would have did the same thing Sammy did. And you know, when guys talk all that crap and that rah-rah crap, because they're not in that position. They're sitting on their couch somewhere on a computer typing away.
So as a boxer, did you ever think about turning pro, being a pro fighter?
All my life I wanted to. And I left this country and I fought under assumed names in other countries. And I've always been in the ring. I just did a show with me fooling around on bags still at my age. You know, I'm pushing 57 now. So I still work out, I still get in the ring a little bit. I still play around. I had a pro training camp on my property. I worked out with guys like, and I'm still very friendly with pro fighters, Prince Badi and Bobby Ches and Jerry Cooney. Grew up in the gyms with him, Lost Battalion. David Reed used to come over to my house a lot. I had the pro training camp, so David lived next door. Bernard Hopkins would train with us at the firehouse in Philly with me and Prince Badi, Antonio Tarver with Prince. So yeah, I've been around all these guys. I know them all since I'm young. Been in and out of ring sparring, running around with them, and I love the boxing world. I got involved with Giulio Vernozzi. I went to UK to watch him fight and got involved with helping managing him and trying to get his career up. He's a 15-0 fighter now. He just was in Italy, won another fight. So I love the game. I love the boxing sport.
So why did you fight under assumed names?
I was on the run when I got in trouble here. And I left the country and I just lived in the gym. And actually, it's one of the reasons Interpol caught me. They knew I was in all the gyms. So I fought in Albania for a while. I fought with the Olympic team there.
Wait, not to cut you off, you fought with the Olympic team while you were on the run?
Yeah, while I was on the run, yeah, I trained with them.
Interpol, this isn't like just FBI in the United States. Interpol is all of...
International Police Patrol.
Yeah.
It's a unit that goes from country to country. So they chased me. I lived every country. I mean, I lived in Africa for a while. I had some friends in Africa, so I went to see them. They helped me get some passports. And so I've been around the world a little bit. And I lived in Cuba. I was with Topanga in Cuba. I was a fighter. I stayed with him a little bit, played around in the ring with him. So Brazil, I was always in the ring. And another 20 countries, I was everywhere. Venezuela, Colombia, I fought in Colombia for a while.
While you were on the run?
While I was on the run.
You're a real-life Jason Bourne. This
yeah.
is like A-like identity,
Yeah.
like Bourne identity.
Yeah.
So you had pro fights while you were on the run?
Yeah, under assumed names. I fought all over, yeah. And they actually put me on TV in Colombia. I was at a Jim Billy's, and there was a big fight going off with two women, a girl from Panama and a girl from Colombia. And one of the girls from Colombia was a fighter that was in the gym with me. Me and her were very friendly. So I went in the ring, I was sparring, and they came in with the cameras. And I didn't know the cameras were coming in for their fight. And it was on TV, so it was on cable vision in Colombia, and that was it. Then I got phone calls from all over the place telling immigration's looking for me, and I took off, and I went to Venezuela. And I went to the stadium in Venezuela. I fought there. They opened the gates for me there. I used to train there. So I trained everywhere, actually. I went to all these places. I went to Medellin. I fought up in their stadium. And I just traveled a lot. I just kept traveling, and my way of existing was just to keep working out and training. And I know there's pictures out there with me always in no shirts and rings and, sparring and all that stuff. But it was a way for me to pass time, positive messages for myself to change my life. And, I had the belief that I could do it.
Which country had the best fighters? would you say had the best boxing?
I got to tell you,
did them all.
I've been in a lot of countries and I've seen some tough fighters. A lot of Latin kids, they're just, you know, their culture is just boxing. I went to a lot of Latin countries. You know, I was in Spain, I was in Venezuela, I was in Colombia, I was in, you know, like I said, Brazil. Most of these Latin countries I went to, there was a ton of tough guy fighters that you don't believe the talent around the world, that they don't have the opportunity to get on a big stage. And you understand why there's so many Latin fighters. They're great fighters. And you know, listen, there's every like this country, you have I think it's mostly the communities that, like myself, that grew up in poverty. So you have, in this country, you have a lot of black fighters because of the poverty situation. And it's their way out of poverty, out of the streets. And they take a positive way and they bring that aggression, that anger, in a good way into the ring. And you get guys like Prince Gotti that, you know, we're friends our whole lives, and he spent some time at prison, changed his life, got in a ring. And if you ever sat down and spoke with him, he's a good-looking guy and just a well-spoken, humble guy. So you look at him and you would say, you know, the message I really to the kids are, you don't need to be a loudmouth to be a tough guy. Prince Gotti is one of the biggest gentlemen you'll meet, and tough guy in the ring, and he was a tough guy in the street, and changed his life and moved forward in the boxing arena. So, you know, those messages, I think, guys like him are a positive role model for some troubled kids in the street, I think, to follow guys like him.
So throughout the history of LCN, who are some of the biggest earners?
Biggest earners, there's a lot of guys. I mean, Tommy Gambino was a gentleman, and he was a big earner. Paul Castellano. That faction of the Gambino family, to me, were businessmen, gentlemen, and big earners. So those guys were, you know, intelligent. You had some other guys on Wall Street that were making big money. So they were more, you know, white-collar guys, and you guys had like Sammy Gravano that was in the construction business that made a ton of money. I mean, there's a lot of guys. Joe Watts was a big name out there that was a tough guy, killer, and a big earner. And in the 302 papers, when Gotti had that Queen of the Day, he's the one who gave up Joe Watts for a murder. So Joe had to cop out and plead to murder charges. So that's the mob treachery. It's back to the same thing. It's just treachery in the mob world.
Online, you read a lot that the mob made a lot of money from gasoline tax.
Yeah, that was Michael Francesi. You know, he's around. He does a lot of talk shows and everything. Michael is a gentleman gangster. He ain't a killer. He wasn't a tough guy, but he was a very intelligent guy, and he knew how to make money. He still knows how to make money. You can't take nothing away from a guy like him because slick dresser, slick talker, and just knows how to hustle the money. He's just good at making money. And there's those types, and to have a good, strong organization, don't get me wrong, because earlier I'm talking about killers, there's not a lot of them. You need a handful of killers, and the rest you need earners. So when you have that mix, then you have become something powerful. And I think that's why the Mafia exists the way it does, because if you have the ability to make money, the money is what brings strength. And then you have the killers around it to control from anybody stepping into that world. And the problem is, a lot of the mob world now is so watered down from guys trying to make their sons and uncles and nephews that ain't about nothing, never cracked an egg.
What was the most money you've seen at one time? Cash on the table. What was the most?
Cash on the table back in the 80s, I think around 3-4 million. That's it. I never seen like
at one time,
yeah,
4 million on the
yeah.
table.
I mean, back in the 80s, so you're talking now would probably be like seeing 20 million. I mean, it's not a lot. I mean, you see money over the years at different times, different guys that had it. It wasn't mine when I seen 3 or 4 million at a time. I didn't like to save money. I spent it like crazy. So, but you know, you see money all the day. Listen, the 80s was a different era. I don't know anybody that was in the mob on the street that wasn't making money in the 80s. 80 was wide open to make money. If you were going to make money, that was the era to make money.
Like that kind of money though, like
that kind
20
of
million in one deal kind of money.
Yeah. You know, we lent money around back then, and you know, I look back and think about it. You know, I'd give somebody $250,000 was nothing. When I opened up my Club Mirage, I told my friend to fly to me, and I gave him $500,000 cash. and he took a train back with it. Not in a blink of an eye. It wasn't a lot of money to me, and that was probably when I did that around the mid-'90s when I gave him that money. So, you know, you're talking about serious money, and that was, you know, 20-something years ago, like it was nothing. So, nah, you know, the money was out there to make back then.
What did you spend most of the money on? You said you used to spend a lot. What was it?
Listen, I love women, traveled around with women everywhere, bought cars, houses. I had, you know, a ton of houses everywhere, every state, every location, traveled everywhere in the world. Most countries, I've been everywhere. So I like to travel, and I spend money, champagne, Cristal, and clothes. I'm a clothes nut. I have, I don't know, a couple hundred pairs of shoes probably still. And I just like, I like good things in life. And unfortunately, I did it the wrong way, and I end up paying for that too. So, but I love a good life, restaurants, shows, sporting events.
Have you ever watched The Sopranos?
Yeah, I watch it here and there. I never watch like full episodes, but I watch it a little bit.
Is that real, true Mafia life, or is that all just for television?
For television, it's a lot of the way they portray it is not accurate of how a crew would run, especially how they would answer to a boss. So, but you know, it's entertainment again. I mean, it's people like it. Why not? Yeah.
And a lot of the scenes and sit-downs is a lot of hollering and screaming. I was told by a guy that would never happen at a sit-down, that they never raise their voice at each other, even on the streets. They never curse a guy because you're still talking to a killer. So everyone was really respectful. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, most of the conversations at a sit-down is, I never been to one that was any kind of, anybody raising a voice or threatening. Again, I say only weak people threaten. It's just when somebody wants to do something, and whether the guys were my enemy or not, when they want to do something to me, I never got a message. They just did it. I said, so I always look at these guys with big mouths talking shit. That's exactly what they are. They're big mouths. That ain't about nothing. That's why they talk so much.
On The Sopranos, there was a scene where they all were going to go on the lam, and he said, Tony said, if we go on the lam now, the Albanians will be living in our houses. Are the Albanian crew that strong, or is that a true statement?
You know, I've said this over and over again, and I travel Albania a lot since I'm home. I've probably been back there 6 times, maybe more than that. And our culture has been suppressed since, you know, the Ottoman days. And so, you know, we know what it is to fight. And the last war was in Kosovo was, you know, only 15 years ago. It's fresh. So most kids are growing up with guns, and most kids are shooting and killing at a young age. And we know what it is to be aggressive. Albania is a very aggressive culture. So for the most part, I think the statement is true. I think any culture that knows Albanians knows they're very aggressive people. And that's one of the faults I think we have. Instead of using our minds a little more, we use our balls. And sometimes without thinking, and you know, hopefully over the years now, things have been changing, the culture's changed. You have a lot of guys like my friend Gotti, who's a neurosurgeon. You got guys like him that are very intelligent, and they show a different side of Albanians. Are hardworking restaurants in the city. There's a ton of them that are Albanian. So, but the statement was accurate. The Albanians are very violent. Yeah.
Well, I noticed when I go to Little Italy, most of the Italian restaurants down there are owned by Albanians.
Yeah. It's Albanians are in several industries. One of them is obviously restaurants. The other is construction, and the other is the streets. And you know, I have a lot of friends that are all over the street. And you know, my life's different. I say this all the time. They're still my friends. I just don't get involved in whatever they're doing. It's none of my business. I don't want to know about it. And my message is always the same. I wish you'd change your life and go back to just open up a restaurant, do different things. But you know, everybody got their choices in life. I'm not here to preach to adults, just to kids.
So the statement on The Sopranos was true? If they
very
were
accurate. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was very accurate.
Can you explain to me what a bust out is? That's another saying that you hear a lot in mafia movies, Goodfellas, Sopranos. What's a bust out?
I think the way you're saying it, terminology is just bust the business out. Whether it's clothing, you know, just sell everything, don't pay anybody, just beat everybody and take in as much money as you can, whatever you can. So you're just going to bust it out and bring in only profit, no no payments to anybody. So if you can make a couple of $100,000 in a month, take it and run, and that's it. Just bust the business out.
How does a business get into a position where it gets busted out?
Well, I think a lot of times it doesn't get into the position. You started it off with the idea of busting it out. Again, I'll use Gotti. He came up with, through some guys with the phone card business years ago. They made millions in the phone card business. And the mentality was just to bust it out, not to run it legitimately. And they started off making so much money, I don't know what they were thinking, why they didn't turn that business into legitimate business and don't bust it out when they seen it was making so much money so easily. And then there was a blunder on their part, or they could still be running that phone card business instead of a scam over these years. But guys have short-term thoughts, and you got guys that have long-term thoughts on how to make money long-term. I mean, I've always had the ability to open up businesses and think about it long-term, not to bust out a business. I think that is more for a short-minded guy, short-sighted, and a guy that doesn't really know how to make big money.
So a bust out is a business that a mob guy would have started. I was under the impression that, say some guy gets in too deep in gambling debts and he owns a company and they come in and charge up shit on his credit, sell all his merchandise. Is that, and then burn it down?
I mean, we used to do that too. I mean, you go into a guy that owes money, come in with 20 credit cards and buy everything in a store. And, with the credit cards, and you bust out his store, and, obviously the feds are going to come knocking on his door shortly and say how all these sales, on all these fake credit cards, why they're coming in. But it was a different business back in the day. You can get away with that too. That's changed over the years too. So, that was one way. When a guy gets in debt, you're starting to step in his business. You're starting to take a percentage of it. And depending if it's a good business or not, if it's a business that nobody knows how to run, or if it's not making a ton of money, they'll bust it out. The way to get their money back from the money he owed.
Is it like the scene in Goodfellas where Paulie gets in a restaurant with a guy and then they buy it in the front, sell it out back, and then when there's no more money, they just burn the shit up?
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's one of the ways. It's not, everything's different scenarios, but yeah, I mean, listen, we used to take trucks out of Kennedy Airport and, we'd sell them out to different stores. They keep them on the rack and sell them half price or whatever they did. Because obviously they're getting it for 10 cents on a dollar, 12 cents on a dollar. So it's easy for them to sell it at 50% off and, sell it real quick and take the money, put it in their pocket. So there's a lot of, there was so many schemes back in the day.
What's the most accurate depiction of the life in the movie? Would you say Goodfellas, Casino? Which is most accurate?
Goodfellas was an entertaining movie. Some of it was accurate because of the violence. I don't think they depicted Jimmy Burke exactly correctly, but I think Bronx Tale was good. There's some comedy in it. It shows some dumb guys from the street. It's not what everybody thinks. 3/4 of these guys can't make 2 cents. So, you got guys like, you hear people talking about Carlo Gambino, or Tommy Gambino, or Paul Castellano. They're not, or Joe Watts. They're not the average gangster. These guys are the top of the line. Guys that really know how to make money in business, or Sammy Gravano construction. Most of these guys, they're not too bright. They can't make 2 cents. So they need to get on the coattails of guys like Sammy or somebody like that to earn a dollar. Otherwise, they're not earning anything. And the same thing in the muscle department. There isn't that many guys that are out there with the capabilities of really being a killer. They talk all that shit, but they're not about that shit. Yeah.
So you say it wasn't an accurate depiction of Jimmy Burke. What did you meet Jimmy Burke?
I was very close with the family and his son, Frankie, who got killed at a young age. But Jimmy was really was, listen, in the mob world, when you cross a guy that's a dangerous guy in the street, and he was a dangerous guy, you're going to get killed. Was he, they make him like he's a maniac just killing everybody, and that's not accurate. I mean, the guy was a good guy. He was good with his kids, and good guy in my world. I'm not saying the life path that he took is conducive to the real world, but I'm saying as a gangster, he wasn't just some nut just randomly killing everybody, the way the picture made it seem. I think I would have did the same thing. He did a major heist, and these guys are spending money left and right when he was told not to, buying things, and got everybody locked up for it. I mean, you're running an organization. It's supposed to be secret. It's not going to be secretive if you're out there spending a heist that was just the biggest heist ever at that time. So.
What about the movie Donnie Brasco? Did you ever run into him on the street, Fistone?
I never ran into him, talked to him on the phone, and he does a lot of TV now. We spoke about a project. He may have been the host of that project. I don't remember exactly what that was about, but yeah, I spoke to him. Nice guy, gentleman, well-spoken. I didn't watch that much of that Donnie Brasco. I watched some parts of that movie also.